So listen, we do want to talk about this TV deal. There's been a report out that they're getting really, really close, and Tony Khan had this to say: "This is the most important and exciting time in AEW's history. In addition to what's happening in the ring, there are so many exciting things happening behind the scenes at AEW right now. We're on the verge of the most important announcements in the history of AEW. There are multiple aspects. The arrival of those announcements is imminent. We'll have big news that could come at any time. Isn't that the best kind of wrestling surprise when you know something is coming and you want it and it's exciting, but you're not sure when it's going to happen? You have that feeling that it's going to happen. And in this case, I have more than a feeling, to paraphrase Boston. I've been working on this for a long time. We have a great team here. The future of AEW is very bright." And of course, a lot of people are taking this to mean he's talking about the TV deal, perhaps the Australia deal, and the Dallas deal. There's been a lot of discussion, and you've been talking a little bit about it on your YouTube channel at 83weeks.com with your program Wise Choices. What do you make of this tease about the new TV deal, Eric?
It's the same thing. How long have we been hearing about this? I mean, I watched a clip yesterday, I think, on social media where Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez are on their radio show, and Dave Meltzer is basically saying the deal is done. It's going to be announced. It's imminent. It's going to be announced at the upfronts. Just clear as a bell. Like he had the information. Dave did his thorough research because he's a journalist and all. It's bullshit. It's all bullshit. That's what I mean. I can't believe anything. I don't think that Tony Khan is intentionally misleading people. And there's a fine line between great promotion and misleading, right? You got to be careful. But again, it's the boy that has cried wolf so many times and failed to show up with even a poodle, a puppy. You can only cry wolf so many times and then show up with stray dogs and expect people to get excited about your shit. That's the Bill Goldberg was talking about the similarities between Tony Khan and Dixie Carter. And Bill hasn't really worked with either one of them, but you don't have to spend a lot of time with either one of them to know what motivates them. And it's attention. That's the one thing that Dixie Carter and Tony Khan really have in common. And it's a dominant part of their personality, at least when they're, in their wrestling environment, is the need for attention supersedes the need for logic. So whatever TV. Look, I think they'll probably get one. I've never been of the mindset that they're done. They're never going to get another TV deal with Warner Brothers. I've never ever said that. I challenge anybody to find even a clip of me saying something like that within the context of the conversation, because I've never said that.
Why do people attribute that to you? Because anytime this conversation comes up, I see a lot of people tagging you like, what will Eric say then after he said it's never coming? And I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure I did most of these shows with you, and I never remember you saying that.
No, I've never said it. Dave Meltzer has said that I've said it.
But you didn't.
But no, I never have. Just like Meltzer has put out there that my opinion of Kevin Owens is that he would never be a world heavyweight champion. I've never said that. I love Kevin Owens' work. I've always put Kevin over. I've worked with Kevin, one-on-one when he was in this program with Shane. I think the world of Kevin Owens.
I think Cornette had problems with Kevin.
Anything he chooses to do. But Dave Meltzer somehow felt it incumbent upon himself to put out there in his little universe that I just, Kevin Owens is never going to be a top guy. Bullshit. And I've never said that I think that Warner Brothers that AEW is not going to get a renewal. I have said, and maybe this is where, because Dave spins off into his own bizarre universe and the fringe follow along like puppies. I have said during that period of time when WWE was up for sale, and I had it on excellent firsthand authority, that Warner Brothers Discovery was interested in purchasing WWE. Well, that indicated to me a strong interest in the wrestling industry and on part of Warner Brothers Discovery. And they obviously saw the value and what it could bring to the network. And I did say, if that were to happen, in my opinion, unlikely at all that AEW would get a renewal, because I just couldn't see two wrestling companies under one broadcast deal. That I did say. That's it. And somehow Dave spins off into the bizarre world of Dave Meltzer and concludes that I've said somehow that Warner Brother or that AEW is not going to get a renewal. Let me be clear. I never said that. I don't think they're going to get, if they get renewed, it's not going to be the deal that people like Dave Meltzer and others were talking about, the $1 billion deals. People, Warner Brothers Discovery woke up a week ago and found out they had $9.1 billion less than they thought they had. Nobody's handing out buckets of money anywhere. AEW is not that valuable of programming. The return on the investment based on the low ratings and the fact that it's professional wrestling means that it is not an advertising friendly, it's not an advertising cornucopia, right? Your ad sales network they're going to wake up in the morning and go, oh, you mean we renewed AEW again? Oh, I'm so happy, because there's going to be so much pressure on me to sell advertising in a show that nobody wants to buy advertising in. That's the world. That's the reality. And within that reality, and here's another reality. Warner Brothers Discovery is not going to go away. They need programming. And relatively speaking, professional wrestling, AEW, is still very attractive programming in terms of cost of acquisition.
There you go.
But in terms of return on investment, it's marginal.
Yeah.
Which in that reality, who amongst us thinks that there's going to be some kind of doubling or tripling of rights fees? I think that's the disconnect from reality that I tend to react pretty aggressively towards when I see it and hear it, because it reflects, number one, ignorance, lack of experience or knowledge, and a spin that is over relied upon. And quit relying on the spin and the hype and the teases and the super things that are going to happen. You're going to change the world of professional wrestling as we know it. Yeah! Fuck that. Just start putting together good shows. Learn how to tell a story. Not the kind of story that you've been selling and telling people are good stories, but really good stories. And just learn how to do that. And your world will change. And maybe some of these things that Tony's trying to create in the minds of people, the big tours in Australia and stadium shows, and oh my God, maybe he could actually deliver them and be successful in the attempt if you just improve the product and quit the nonsense.
Hey, I do want to ask you, I've heard from several people, Heard, Crockett, others, that the way WCW had a lot of their ad sales was they were bundled up with other Turner sports. So if they had football or they had basketball, or certainly they had the Braves, then it would just add to the total cum, because wrestling did generate a lot of eyeballs, but it wasn't necessarily advertiser friendly, as you said.
Right.
The advertisers weren't beating your door down to get their product on your wrestling show. However, when you add it as part of that sports package, now it really adds to the total number of eyeballs that are watching the sports package. So instead of selling just baseball, just basketball, just football, just wrestling, it's a part of the sports package. And it looks like on paper, you can deliver a lot of value and a lot of eyeballs. Do you imagine that Turner is still trying to position their sales that way? Because when I watch AEW, it looks like they have two commitments from advertisers, DraftKings and State Farm. And those folks are there pretty consistently. But outside of that, it does feel like it's sort of run of sight. They're going to be on all Turner programming. Like, these commercials are commercials you could see anywhere on TBS or TNT. Do you remember the sports initiative being a big part of what WCW did? And how effective do you think that could be for TNT and TBS and AEW?
Well, I clearly don't know how the sales structure is set up over at Warner Brothers Discovery. I would assume that ad sales treats AEW like they treat it's just a product in the catalog. It's really if you're an ad salesperson for Turner Ad Sales, you walk in with a briefcase and a drive and you plug it in and say, okay, here's our programming. Here's what we have. Here's our numbers relative to that programming. So I don't think you can, I've said this before, and this is another, it was a big topic of conversation a year and a half ago, led especially by Meltzer and people like him, where there was a lot of comparisons being made. And this is back when Dave Meltzer was predicted they were going to get multiples of their licensing deal. I don't remember what the number was. It was fucking ridiculous. It doesn't matter. But it was multiples of what they're getting now. And Dave based that projection on the fact that other sports franchises and sports rights fees were escalating at such a high pace. And of course, look at WWE. And somehow making a correlation to AEW and what Dave perceived or projected AEW could enjoy in terms of a rights fee increase, because he was comparing it to sports primarily, NHL specifically. I'm thinking, what? Only an idiot like Dave Meltzer, someone who has never actually stepped foot in the business for more than 10 minutes, would think that you could sell wrestling to a advertising agency as a sport. You might be able to sell it and categorize it as live action entertainment. That works. And because it's live action, it has similar attributes, similar properties to sports, because it's happening now. And there's very few things other than news that you can watch that's happening now, which makes it attractive. Always has. That's why one of the first things that I did when I walked out of Ted Turner's office with a mandate to create a show to compete with WWE, the very first thing on my list of things to do differently is to be live every week. Because even back then, live was better than anything else. Still is. So you can make some correlations to live action in sports, but again, for someone like Dave Meltzer who's never spent a second in the industry, the only thing he knows is what he reads in Variety or what other people tell him, second and third hand information. That's the extent of Dave Meltzer's research and knowledge. It's not sports. So I think, yes, to sum this up, do I think they're going to get renewed? I think it's likely they will, because it is cost effective. Warner Bros. Discovery, regardless of their financial condition right now, no matter what their strategies are going to be a year from now, 5 years from now, even if they're going to sell off parts, which is what I'm hearing, by the way, is that Warner Brothers Discovery, CNN is going to get spun off. Other divisions are going to get spun off. It's not going to be pretty. And from what I'm hearing, and I don't know that it's true, I tend to believe it. But regardless of that, Warner Brothers Discovery still got to have shit on TV every week. And wrestling is relatively inexpensive. So even if it's losing money, relatively speaking, they may renew it anyway, just to have something there that does attract, even if it's only 600,000 or 700,000 people, 600,000 or 700,000 people. They may do it. What's the alternative? The alternative is for Warner Brothers Discovery to TBS to just put reruns in there. That's a real thing, because they already own that content. They have a library. They can plug it in just like you can put in a CD. Do they still make CDs, by the way? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But if they did,
we get the reference.
You just have that in your library, and if you're in the mood to listen to Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels from 1967, you go to your Mitch Ryder catalog, you pull it out, you plug it in. Doesn't cost you a dime. Don't have to download it. You already own it. And TBS Turner has a massive library of content, so there's no cost of acquisition. All of the sales is upside. From a purely financial point of view, that would make more sense, particularly for a company that's losing or has lost $9 billion, as opposed to stroking a check for $100 million or whatever the fantasy number would be for programming that's continually losing audience and can't hold its lead in. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. It all depends on, I've said this before, Mr. Meltzer. It all depends on the strategy of Turner, Warner Brothers Discovery. Unless you're in those meetings, unless you're part of the conversations that are taking place, hoping to resurrect and get Warner Brothers Discovery on the right track, and the kind of ideas that are coming to the table in those discussions as to how to do that. Only if you're part of those discussions would you have any idea at all, even a good guess, as to whether or not AEW has a future there. The rest of us are all just running our freaking mouths.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing. Tony's running his mouth to keep his audience excited. Dave Meltzer is running his mouth to try to create the illusion that he has inside information that he doesn't have. I'm running my mouth here because, hell, we have a podcast that people all over the world listen to, and it's one of the most financially successful podcasts in the marketplace, thanks to the team over at Every Shows and Dave Green, Podcast Heat. We're a huge success financially, and I have fun doing it. But I'm running my mouth because I don't know fuck all, just like nobody else does either, unless you're in that room.
Well, what I know from experience is when you're buying advertising, so I'm saying as an advertiser, right? Someone who's paying to get a commercial on the air, live just works best, man. You know, I got towards the end of my buying cycle. I said, hey, if it ain't live news or sports, I ain't buying it. Because the other stuff, I found that people could just DVR and fast forward, or they could watch one of their other favorite series on a streaming network, just one after another, and never have to sit through a commercial. But commercials become the necessary evil if you're watching a live event, whether that's news or sports or wrestling. I mean, I guess we could go sports entertainment there. But I also hear pretty consistently that, hey, compared to all the other live content, aside from news, the rights fees that the NBA and the NFL and baseball, et cetera, all the other quote unquote traditional sports, I realize wrestling, sports entertainment, but you get where I'm going. Those fees are astronomical. So this is, and I don't know, we don't like to think about wrestling this way, but it is a low cost alternative. You know, it is a way to say you have some live programming without having to break the bank to get it. So I could see it, but to your point, when Fox tried this with the WWE, they said we couldn't get any ROI. So it's got to be part of the overall strategy. I don't think there is a circumstance where AEW, or for that matter, WWE, can be the centerpiece of any network. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You could build around it.
Yes.
You know, especially in the case of, excuse me, WWE right now, it's hot. You know, if you look even up against the Olympics, I know a lot of people were using the Olympics as an excuse for Dynamite, but if you look at WWE's numbers head to head against the Olympics, they're down single digit percentages, not 25% and 30% like AEW was, because they're hot and they're strong. And you've got, in the case of Raw, I think last week's episode was about 1.823 million people or something close to that, I think. That's a big number for you got a demo number of whatever it was, but I think it was up around 0.60 or 0.60 plus. That's a big number. So you can use that, you can promote to that audience. Ideally, that was the goal for Brad Siegel. When Nitro, first of all, he didn't want it, as we all know. We know the story. But once it hit and immediately became competitive with WWE, like right out of the chute, I'm not talking about the first night because they weren't on, but even afterwards, we'd win one, Raw would win one, we'd win two, they'd win one, they'd win two, we'd win one. We were back and forth until Nitro came along, or until NWO came along. But Brad Siegel got so excited by those numbers that he saw the opportunity because our demos were pretty clear. 18 to 39 was the core, 18 to 49 was the bulk, and then you had the fringe of teen, preteen, and women. Brad looked at the growth of Nitro and went, I can promote other shows that target that same demo. Makes sense on paper, right? And Brad was a very smart programmer. Brad was not just in the job because he knew somebody that knew somebody. Brad was very talented and had a good feel. And for someone like Brad, with his experience and talent and success, to look at that wrestling number and go, wow, I can use that to promote other similar type demo programs. Common sense. And he did it. It didn't work because the wrestling audience is so unique. They'll tune in for the product that they want, but the minute it's over, they're out of there. It's the extreme version of must-see TV for that audience. They're not going to stick around for anything else you have to say. Brad found that out. Fox found that out. I don't know. I'm guessing if I'm an executive at Warner Brothers Discovery, my company just lost $9 billion, and somebody's asking me for my opinion. Yeah, I don't know if I'd throw my weight behind a wrestling idea, just because it's so difficult. Even if I thought AEW was flawless, it wouldn't change the reality of how the business of the business looks at professional wrestling.